Hi, and welcome to another episode of Piano TV. So today I wanted to do a video where we discuss Chopin's easiest piano pieces, but by no stretch of the imagination is Chopin easy at all. At best, his music starts at an intermediate level and then works up to very, very advanced. This video was a request, and I just wanted to share the songs I teach to my students when they first want to get into Chopin and just kind of go through all of his genres. For this video, I'm going to be referring to the RCM grades, the Royal Conservatory of Music. So if I say, grade 10, that would be a very, very high level. And it's pretty similar to the ABRSM, except the ABRSM doesn't go quite as high. ABRSM only goes up to 8. So, grade 8 ABRSM, grade 10 RCM will be pretty equivalent. So anyway, I just wanted to give you that heads up. Let's get started. I think the easiest way to do this video is to break his compositions into genre categories, kind of like I have up here with his preludes, waltzes, polonaises, and so forth. So we are going to talk about each of these categories in turn and which pieces in those categories are the most doable, and then which pieces are best avoided when you're starting Chopin. And you can kind of, I did the green check marks and the red X's and stuff to give you a sense of which ones to start with and which ones to avoid. If you're not sure what level you're at and you're not sure if you're ready to get into Chopin at that kind of later intermediate level, start by learning one of his easiest songs, which we'll talk about in just a second here. If it is a huge struggle and you're just gritting your teeth to get through it, then put it aside, work on some other music for a while, and then come back to it later. Chopin does take time. For the most part, 3 years piano experience would be my general estimate before even attempting to play Chopin. Everyone's different, but a really good starting point when you're learning Chopin are the preludes, because the easiest 3 preludes that we have here are all pretty famous. You might have even heard at least one of them before. And another good thing about them too is that they're all pretty short. They're all about a page in length. So these are the most approachable. A lot of the preludes seem like they're approachable because a lot of them are short, a page or 2, but some of them are really scary, especially ones like this. I'm not going to list all of the scary preludes because there's quite a few of them, but these ones are a really good starting point. One of the very first Chopin teachers I really like teaching my students is his waltz in A minor, because it's really well known, it's really approachable, and it has some fancy little show off parts too. So I think this one actually seems like it's more difficult than it is, but beyond that, his waltzes aren't really easy at all. I mean, it's all of Chopin's music, it's not really easy, but some of the best ones, like his opus 64 waltzes, which is the minute waltz and the waltz in C sharp minor, and those, they're at about a grade 9 level, as is some of his other best ones. But Chopin is so nuanced in his style that it's really only a good idea to try the harder ones, like the opus 64 ones, once you've been thoroughly acquainted with his style. So these ones here are his easiest ones. And I want to make a note on the Grand Valse Brilliance to wait for later, because this is an ARCT level piece. I don't know why I didn't write that down. And I think the thing about this one that gets people is a lot of people try to learn it and then realize it's extremely difficult, because it doesn't always sound like it's super crazy, because it's a really catchy song. So that's just a warning I want to throw out there. Also, just a side note in case you're wondering, I'll be linking a list of all of these at the bottom in my blog post. So if you don't have to memorize what's on the screen or anything, I just kind of want to go through with it quickly. So with the exception of a few polonaises, like these ones right here, most of Chopin's polonaises are really advanced. They're generally beyond the waltzes. There are a lot of them that are a grade 10 level and even beyond that. His easiest polonaises as well were all published posthumously. That's what this post H means, and apparently spell check is telling me that this is bad. Post is not a word. So I don't know if that impacts things for you when you're learning. Some people don't like learning pieces that were composed by someone after they died, because for one reason or another, the composer oftentimes didn't choose to publish those in his lifetime. Maybe Chopin was unsatisfied with them, or they just kind of got forgotten. But all the same, these are some good options. None of Chopin's mazurkas are at all particularly easy. You'd honestly be better off starting off with the easier preludes and waltzes first. But once you've got a few Chopin pieces under your belt, these are a few good ones that you can move on to. They're all at a grade 8 level. And overall, his mazurkas are mid-range pieces. They're early advanced to advanced, basically between a grade 8 and grade 10 level. Chopin's nocturnes are awesome, but they're almost entirely out of reach until you're at least an early advanced level. The range and difficulty for the nocturnes are anywhere between grade 9 and ARCT, which is basically the highest level. There is one nocturne you can attempt if you've had success with some of the previous Chopin suggestions, though, and that's the nocturne in G minor. And anything beyond that, like, honestly, just save them for later. So now we're going to take a look at some of the categories that you really don't even want to look at unless you are quite advanced at piano. Honestly, don't even bother. Don't even look at his etudes. With the exception of there's one etude that's at a grade 10 level. It's the F minor one, number 2. But all of the other ones are ARCT level, which is basically like as hard as it gets in piano. These etudes are up there with some of the most difficult piano repertoire of all time. So save these pieces for, like, you know, dreams and eventual goals. The ballads are just as challenging as the etudes. They're all at an ARCT level, and I know they're beautiful and amazing, but they're completely out of reach to all but the most advanced players. Some other very famous Chopin pieces, like his Fantasy Impromptu, or any of the impromptus, or his scherzos, are all extremely difficult again. So like the others, like the etudes and the ballads, they're all at around an ARCT level. They are really, really tough. Save these ones for when you're a master. So now that we've looked at Chopin's main categories, let's look at his top 5 easiest songs in all the categories combined. So we're going to go in order from easiest to hardest, starting with the Prelude in C minor. Now I think this one's the easiest of the bunch just because it's the shortest. So it's about half a page long, and it's really, really, really slow. So you have lots of time to think about what you're doing. But if you have smaller hands, this might not be the one for you because there's a lot of like 4-note chords and stuff like that. Next, we've got the Waltz in A minor, which is actually one of my favorite ones to teach to beginners to Chopin. This is actually, even before the Prelude in C minor, I'll often teach this one just because it's so familiar, and it actually sounds really, really impressive, even though it's not as, I don't know, it's not as difficult as it sounds. Then we've got the Prelude in E minor, which is a really chord heavy song. It's not too bad though if you're pretty good at chords. I always found this one really easy to sight read overall, especially because the right hand is pretty sparse. There's not a lot going on in it. There's a pretty tough part in the middle, but honestly, the hardest part about this song is just like the mood. It's so, there's so much repetition in the chords that it's hard to create like a sense of dynamic and movement in it. And then our last two are both polonaises, which are really similar in the difficulty. I just think this one's a little bit easier. There's some fast arpeggios and movements and stuff though, which I think makes it more difficult than the Prelude that we just talked about. And lastly, the B flat major polonaise, which is similar to the fourth one. It just has a little bit more movements and things like rocking octaves in the left hand, which is why I think it's a little bit harder. And here's the complete list of the easiest Chopin pieces that we've talked about, just beyond the top 5. The top 5 are right here, and then everything else that we mentioned previously in the video is here. And as I mentioned at sort of at the beginning of this video, all of this is going to be written out on the blog post, so if you want to like print it off or reference it or whatever, it'll be there for you. And that is all for today's video. As I already mentioned, if you go into the description bar, you can visit the blog post that goes along with this video at pianotv.net, and I'll have all these songs that we were looking at and talking about listed like in order if you are learning Chopin and you need like a good place to start. Thank you so much for watching this video. Subscribe if you haven't already. Send it a like if you like this video, and I will catch you next time. What we're gonna go